Hello all and welcome to video class by Konnur Institutes. Today we will start with a new chapter, that's the theory of the firm under perfect computation. So in our previous classes or previous chapters wherein we have understood how the consumer used to buy, right? So that was something we understood about consumer behavior, right? And in the later chapter we understood how the producer is going to produce his goods and services. So that was all about the producer behavior, or even we can call it the production function, wherein we have also studied the different cost curves, right? So in this chapter we understand how the firm is going to decide how many goods needs to be produced. So that's the reason the title itself is self-explanatory. It's telling us the theory of the firm. So under which kind of market situation we are understanding is under the perfect competition. So in this chapter we talk about the firm's decision, how it is going to consider or how many goods it needs to be produced. So these all terms comes under this chapter. So before we start, let's understand how this firm is going to decide or how much it needs to be produced. So do we have any answer for this kind of question, how the firm is going to produce or how it is going to decide how much the output needs to be produced? So we cannot just randomly say that these many units, or it may just go on producing like that, right? So we have to understand, or we have to study certain things here. Maybe that might be the consumer behavior or the fashion, the trends, or might be the market situation, right? So depending on these or keeping these all the studies, we come to a conclusion that this might be the output which we have to produce or which we need to produce in the coming year or for the future market, right? So keeping these studies, we decide, right? So that's the reason here, to understand this, we have certain assumptions made here. We have already made these assumptions in the previous chapters, right? So keeping when we were studying the consumer behavior, we have made assumptions like his income will be constant, right? And also the price of the other good, whatever we were considered, even that was constant, right? So those were the assumptions. Here also we made certain assumptions. First assumption is that it's a ruthless profit making or profit maker. What we are talking about here is we are talking about the firm. So firm is a ruthless profit maximizer or profit maker, what we can say. Why we are talking about this profit maker? When you start a firm, do you start a firm to close it down after certain days or after certain years? No, right? So we start a business or we start a firm keeping in mind that we will take it forward or we will earn a profit from this firm. So that's the main motto of us to start a business, right? So that's the reason whatever the firm we have considered here, we call it as a ruthless profit maker. Ruthless means we are not going to stop making profit or we are not going to stop earning profit. So here, how the firm is going to make this profit? Whatever it has raw materials it produces, and with that produced goods and services, it's going to sell it into the market and it earns from that, right? So by selling the goods and services produced by a company or produced by a firm, after selling that into the market, it is going to earn a profit. So that's how the firm works, right, in common. With that we are making this profit. So another assumption is that whatever it is going to produce, we say it as output, right? So output is interchanged with sold goods and services. Why we are interchanging these is because here we have made an assumption that whatever the firm is going to produce this output, this entire output is sold into the market. So that's the another assumption wherein we have made to understand the firm behavior in the perfect competition. So once we have done these all the assumptions, so we next understand here one problem which every company or every firm faces, that is the profit maximization problem. So this is one thing which we have to understand, which we have to explain, or which we have to analyze here to understand the firm's behavior. And next is that we have to understand this supply curve. What is this supply curve? The firm decides to produce that output, the level of output at which the company chooses to produce at a different market prices. So that defines as the supply curve. And we have to also understand the aggregate supply curve, which is called as this aggregate market supply curve. Okay. So aggregate supply curve, we call it as a market supply curve. Why we call it as market supply curve is, in a market we don't have a single buyer or single seller, right? Do we have such kind of single buyer and single seller? Can I say that I am the only buyer in entire market? No, right? So we have several sellers, several buyers. So that's the reason each company has its own supply curve. Right? So when I am defining about my firm, then my supply curve will be different from other firms. So aggregating supply curve means what I am doing is here my supply curve, my firm's supply curve, somebody else's firm's supply curve. So I am aggregating everybody's firm's supply curve. So when you aggregate, when you combine everybody's supply curve, then it called as the market supply curve, because that's where we understand that everybody's firm has been contributing towards the market, right? So one or the other products are coming from different kinds of firms. So that's the reason we call it as the market supply curve. So if you understand these terminologies or these points, it's easy for us to understand the theory of the firm under perfect competition. So let's understand what is perfect competition. So if you have your textbooks, you can open and just check. There are several features which have been given for the perfect competition. So first we'll understand what are the features of the perfect competition. First is that the market consists of a large number of buyers and sellers. As I have mentioned earlier, right? Market doesn't just includes one buyer or one seller. It's not like that, right? When we are talking about market, it has a large number of buyers and also large number of sellers. So if you consider this as a market, and if you have only one buyer and only one seller, it's quite difficult for the buyer and the seller to communicate, right? And if you compare it to the market looks very larger, whereas buyer and seller are a very small unit, right? So that's the reason, to make it full, what we have is we have a large number of buyers and large number of sellers. So if you consider this individual unit, the individual unit of a buyer and the seller, it looks very small to the large market, right? So that's the first feature of the perfect competition. Second is that each firm produces and sells a homogeneous product. So what is this homogeneous product? So when we have a car market which is related to cars, okay? So in that market, can you expect a bicycle? No, right? So we have made that market which is specific for cars. So you cannot expect a bicycle to be in that market, right? So here homogeneous means that identical products of which have been produced by the companies. So identical means the goods and services which are produced by the firm will have same characteristics. So that's the another feature of the perfect competition. Next is that entry into the market as well as the exit from the market are free for firms. See, entry and the exit means that entry is nothing but the establishment of the firm. Okay, if I want to start a business, then I have to set up my business, right? So that actually means the entry into the market. And if I want to exit, that means I want to close down my business. So that is the exit. So this doesn't have any rigid regulations. Okay, we don't have that strict rules and regulations. So that is very free. It is very easy for us to start and dissolve our firm. So if we have that rigid rules and regulations, what might have happened in the market? Let's take an example. If you think that this is the market, right? If we have these rigid rules and regulations, then we never have seen so many markets here. Okay? We would have never seen so many sellers or buyers or firms in this market. You can see that when you enter the market, you see either side there will be sellers sitting, right? So if we have rigid rules and regulations, will we ever able to get that to see those sellers who are sitting in the rows? No, right? We could have seen only just one seller or might be very few sellers who are sitting in the market, right? So that's the reason when we have made this a free exit and free entry for the firm or for the producers, then it is quite a huge number of sellers and huge number of buyers can be seen in the market. So that's the another feature of the perfect competition. And last is that information is perfect. So what kind of information are we talking about here is whatever the information which is out in the market. What kind of information can we expect out in the market? If we look from the point of the producer, then producer will get all the information what the consumer is looking for. It might be his preferences, or it might be his expectation with regards to the price, the quality and the quantity, right? So if we consider or if we look at from the buyer point of view, here we consider or here we look at the information with regards to the product, how much the other companies are pricing it, or how much the other companies are giving at, okay, and what is the quality which the other companies are giving, and how is the exchange things are happening. So these all are the information which the buyer will get, right? So this information is perfect in the market. The buyer will know each and everything. What is the market price, what is the quantities, how much the quality is being included, or what kind of quality the product has. These all are information is what the buyer is getting. And in the same manner, the producer is also getting this exact information, the exact perfect information. So that's the another feature of the perfect competition. So these are four features, whatever we have discussed, these are four features with regards to the perfect competition. This decides one more major characteristics, that is price taking behavior. Okay, so what is this price taking behavior? Here also we have two aspects. Okay, one is buyer viewpoint and the seller viewpoint. If you see from a seller point of view, the price taking behavior, it tells us about if a seller has produced certain goods or he has produced an output and he wants to sell it in the market. So we have this market price, okay, in the, which is the standard we can say, okay. Market price is this. The seller cannot sell any of his goods above this market price. Why he cannot sell is because if he sells any of his goods above the market price, then who are those buyers coming to buy those goods and services? No, right? We won't get buyers, because if you compare to the other firms, there are so many firms which might be costing less than or equal to this market price. So he has to think, what is the price I have to quote? And if you look from the buyer point of view, if a buyer is asking to the firm for less than the market price, if he asks the seller to give a product less than the market price, then this seller is he going to sell his goods and produce his goods and services to that buyer less than the market price? No, right? He don't want to lose, because he has his motto, right? Profit maximization. That's the basic motto of a producer or a buyer or a seller, right? So that's the reason, if a buyer is quoting or if he is asking to give a product less than the market price, then he is not going to sell it. So that's the reason we understand this price taking behavior. So if you see from the seller point of view, it is different, and if you see from the buyer point of view, it is different. And if at all he has decided to sell any of his goods and services above the market price, then no buyer is going to buy any of his goods and services. Why? Because there are so many other sellers in the markets itself who are prevailing the same kind of goods and services, because we have talked about the homogeneous, right? So there are so many firms which are selling is the same kind of goods and services in the market. So what the buyer does, he shifts from that seller to the another seller. He used to buy with that seller before, but now when he has increased, when he has charged more than the market price, what he has done is, the buyer has shifted his buying behavior from that previous seller to the another, right? So this happens. So what the seller is going to see here, he is losing his profit, right? So that's the reason he is being seen under the losses, right? But that is not making any changes to the buyer, because he has already had the alternative choices in the market. So that's the reason these all are the things wherein we understand in the perfect competition. So I hope you all have understood better these terminologies, these features. So if you understand these terminologies and the basic features of the perfect competition, then it is easy for us to understand this whole chapter. See you all in the next video class.